Welcome to In the Spotlight with Amy Scruggs, where we feature great artists, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and, well, anyone that should have that moment to share their story in the spotlight. Welcome to In the Spotlight with Amy Scruggs, and we have an incredible guest today. If you love music, then you want to hang in there with us for the rest of this interview because we have the one and only Randal Franks. He has an incredible background that we're going to dive into and find out about, but he is a very well sought after musician. And we get to hear his journey, his story, what he's doing. He's also a pretty famous actor as well, and he's multi-talented and with us today. Randal, thank you so much for being here.
Amy, it's so good to have you here in my home in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm just glad that you wanted to talk to me today.
It's fascinating to get to talk with you. A lot of people want to be artists or musicians, and we start piano lessons with our kids when they're little, or fiddle lessons or other instruments, and we say, here you go, and we put them in their hands, and we don't always speak with our kids necessarily about what it's like to really have that be a career. And what you've done is turned your passion for music into a really incredible career that we're going to talk about. But let's go back to young Randal. When you first found out that you loved music, when did that start for you?
Well, it was a childhood endeavor, just like you mentioned, with the violin lessons. I started out very early, but it was the early entertainers of bluegrass music who inspired that. You may remember the television show, The Beverly Hillbillies.
Of course.
Or the Andy Griffith Show. Well, on the Andy Griffith Show, there were the Dillards who played the Darlings. And then on the Beverly Hillbillies, there were folks like Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs who appeared on those shows. And they inspired me as a child. And I remember telling my mother, I want to do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's really what inspired me to start out learning to play. Now, I wound up learning or signing up for classical violin. I'll tell you a quick story. The violin instructor came in my third grade elementary school room. He played a tune called the Orange Blossom Special. And of course, that's what I wanted to learn, and I signed up. He taught me how to play Brahms and Beethoven and Bach and Mozart, but he never taught me how to play the Orange Blossom Special. So I had to go out and find real fiddle players who actually played that, folks like Chubby Wise, who popularized it, and learn from them. So eventually I got to learn it, but it was not in those early days.
It was a roundabout. Oh, I can relate to that.
It was a bait and switch is what it was. But I love Dr. Greiser. He was a wonderful teacher, and he started my road in music. So
I started in classical as well. I wanted to play country music, and next 10 years I spent in classical training on the piano. So I totally relate to that story of you having to find your way back into the music that you really wanted to play. When did that get to transition? Did that go through like high school and right after that you dove in? And I know you've paid your dues, so let's talk about that, because a lot of young kids think, well, I'm just going to make it. And we all talk about, the 20-year overnight success, right? So let's walk your journey a little bit of that overnight success that you were able to have, as I say in quotes.
Well, for me, it was, we'll say overnight. In many ways, I started touring when I was 13 years old. I had my own band. I put together a bunch of those young musicians who were in Dr. Greiser's various classes at different elementary schools as we were coming up, and we all enjoyed country music. We liked bluegrass. We liked Appalachian style music. So we started getting together every Friday night at our various parents' homes and playing. Well, that's how it started out. Well, before long, we said, oh, this sounds pretty good. We should go out and perform. So we started a band called the Peachtree Pickers, and we started playing at flea markets and churches and auctions, and anything that would be an opportunity for us to play. Finally went to bluegrass festivals, and those opportunities eventually led us to gain the attention of some major Grand Ole Opry stars, like the gentleman you see behind me on the wall, Bill Monroe. Wow. He brought me and my bluegrass band, the Peachtree Pickers, to perform for the Grand Ole Opry.
How old were you at that time?
Let's see. I'm going to say I was about 16 to 17 in that time frame when we got to make that crossover. And we also got to do. We were discovered by some folks doing a worldwide television series called the Country Kids TV series, and we became regulars on that TV show. And it was a wonderful experience. It wasn't quite overnight, but we grew into it. And as as time went along, I got to stay performing with the Grand Ole Opry as a guest star as the young members of my band all went their different ways in college. And then the doors opened for me, and a little later as a country entertainer, crossing over into acting. So
Wow.
long road to get to where I ultimately wanted to get, because you remember my original goal that I mentioned is I said I wanted to do what they did with Flatt and Scruggs on the Beverly Hillbillies, the Darlings on the Dillards as the Darlings on the Andy Griffith Show. So it took a few years to get to that goal, but thankfully the Lord opened those doors, and I did.
What was it like for you starting that young and starting in the flea markets? Like you're saying, we've all, and any of us who have been out there doing it know that's kind of where we cut our teeth a little bit. But to go to the Opry so young, did you understand the magnitude, the reverence of what that meant at that age? Or do you look back now and see it even larger?
Yes, I was very blessed to have a number of mentors around me who were long-time country music performers, going all the way back into the 30s and 40s. And they had instilled in me an appreciation for the artist of the Opry, as well as the importance of that institution, as well as in our local state, the WSB Barn Dance, which was our Opry out of Atlanta back in the 30s, 40s, and into the early 50s. Those were the entertainers that I was blessed to come up under. So I knew exactly where I was getting to perform, and it meant a great deal to me to become part of that. And I knew as a kid, there were only a few avenues to become a country music star.
Right.
You were either going to play the clubs, which obviously our young group could not do, or you got well enough known that you got a hit on country radio, and then they accepted you. Well, neither of those were paths. The last person prior to our group getting into the country stratosphere, as it was back in the 80s, was Tanya Tucker, who, dear friend over the years, but she was blessed to be one of those that got an early hit in her teens. And my friend Marty Stewart was another one who came up in the industry and played along with many legends in his teens. Ricky Skaggs is another one.
Yes.
So I was so blessed to have those people around me and coming up, and I knew exactly what the Opry was, and I'm still, every time I get to walk on the stage at the Opry, it's a thrill to me because those early stars still emanate from those halls, and I'm just blessed to be among them.
The Franks family is known in music. I mean, you aren't the first generation to be in music. You come from a line of musicians, don't you?
Well, musicians, yes. My great-grandparents, my great-grandfather was a fiddle player. My great-uncles and aunts all played. They weren't what I would call professional. Now, the most famous Frank in our family is J.L. Frank, who was an early promoter of country music. He's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. And, so the Franks have been around in country music for many years. And he brought along artists like Gene Autry and Roy Acuff and Minnie Pearl and Pee Wee King and so many others. And thankfully, many of those stars remembered the Frank name when I came along and took me under their wing and helped me along my way.
So somewhere along the lines, doing music all these years and living your passion, which is just so incredible, you also had that talent in there for acting and expanding your talents. Let's talk about your acting career a little bit and how you wove that in while still being a touring musician.
One of my first roles was in a film called Desperate for Love. It was centered around a high school choir. Christian Slater, Brian Bloom, Veronica Cartwright were some of the stars in the movie, Tammy Lauren. And everybody pretty much in the movie were in the choir in some way or circulated around it. And I got a small role as part of one of the choir members. I remember one of my favorite things, Billy Vera of the Beaters. I don't know if you remember Billy Vera, but he was the choir director, and I got to teach him actually some movements of how to direct a choir, and that stuck in my mind during that time. But we had a lot of fun doing that movie, and that was playing a high school singer was pretty much right in my bailiwick. So it
probably came pretty naturally to you.
Yeah. So then the casting people with that film and a couple of other projects that I was involved with in the late 80s introduced me to the folks at In the Heat of the Night. And that came about. I often say it was nothing to do with my talent. It was God's providence opening the doors and allowing me to be placed in a in the right position for the key people at that show to say, we want to create a character for you. And thankfully they did. And I got to stay there for 5 years on NBC and then moved to CBS. And then from there moved on to other TV series and movies. And, all of that was born out of this, coming out of the violin and the opportunities that came to me through country music. And so acting is still a passion. And, I've got a new project that I'm working on for myself. It's a short film called The American's Creed, where I play a character from the American Revolution that will hopefully be available in the film festivals in the coming year. I've got my last film that any of your viewers might watch was The Cricket's Dance, a wonderful film that they can catch in most streaming services. And I play a character back in the 1800s in that film. So I get to play a variety of things: doctors, lawyers, police officers, of course, from In the Heat of the Night, and so many other characters, which allow me to stretch and find what's in here and share that with the world.
What was some of that stretch for you stepping into acting? What were some of the skills that were where you pushed yourself and said, hey, I'm learning how to adapt to this. This is different than what I do as a musical artist. What was some of that stretching and lessons you learned in stepping, especially being on a series for that many years? I'm sure there was routine involved with that, but what was different?
Well, being on the series is you're there every day and you're working pretty much every day. And I was blessed, initially I had to get over the star awe.
Right.
The first time Carol O'Connor walked on the set and I looked over at him and said, wow, there's Archie Bunker, because I grew up watching Carol O'Connor as All in the Family, on All in the Family. And those experiences of the stars that become on our show, once I got over that awe, I never lost it. Because I always respected, it's just like walking on the stage with an artist from the Grand Ole Opry. Those people are icons. They have a wonderful body of work, many of them I was blessed to grow up watching. So people like Ken Curtis, who played Festus on Gunsmoke, who became a dear friend of mine and a great fan of my music. He was a talented singer himself with the Sons of the Pioneers. But folks like that who became longtime friends, the process of learning from them, because that's what it was for me, working on that show, a day-to-day show, 6 days a week. I call it my time at the MGM University of Atlanta, because we filmed outside Atlanta, about 30 miles in a little town called Covington, Georgia. And so every day I got to learn from some of the greatest actors who ever walked on a set. I got to learn from the greatest directors of television history that came to do our shows. I also got to learn from screenwriters who were amazing in what they did, as well as the lighting technicians and the other people, the other crew who worked in various aspects of what we did. So I look at that 5 years pretty much as I was in a very intensive university study about all aspects of the film industry. And thankfully, I still carry a lot of those learned lessons with me, and I apply those when I'm directing films or producing or working with other great artists. I'm able to impart a little something that may have been shared with me along the way to a young actor or a young director who I share a story about something and they go, I hadn't thought of that. And so it takes them in a different direction that maybe makes the project a little better.
Well, what I love is that you are continually adding tools into your toolbox, because not everyone is always aware when they're putting tools in. You're just going and doing and taking on new experiences. But it seems that you really had an awareness going, wow, this is something new. I might need that later. Well, I'm gonna put this away in this memory bank, or I'm going to file this here because that's going to be a great resource for something upcoming, or maybe to encourage or empower somebody else you're meeting. And it seems that you've really done a great job at taking all of these experiences in music and acting and really seeing it as a big toolbox that you have now in life. And you and I have spoken before. I know you have a huge heart for giving back, and especially to the youth. And I would love to talk about your outreach and how you're using these tools, and talk about the programs that you have and what you're doing.
One of the greatest opportunities for me was to see my parents' investment in the young people who were among my Peachtree pickers. We had a lot of great musicians, many who went on to play music with other acts and continue to play to this day. Others, like many high school and elementary school musicians, that it was a pastime at the time and they moved on. But seeing them invest in those young people was something that I wanted to carry on in my career as an adult, as I wanted to see other young people come up in traditional Appalachian music. In fact, one of the last things that my late mother, my mom and dad managed my career throughout from those early days. Mother was still my business manager when she passed away some years ago. And one of the last things that she, I think, had in mind, she said, why don't you start a scholarship for young people and create an opportunity for you to invest in some young people who were wanting to continue the music that you love. And so I did. In fact, we utilized her homegoing service as a fundraiser for the scholarship. And we had all kinds of entertainers come and participate and raised a lot of money and kicked off the scholarship fund that to this day gives the Pearl and Floyd Franks Scholarship. We've helped, I think, about 35 youth to this day. And it's more than just giving them a college scholarship. We often mentor youth that we find coming up, elementary, high school, and engage them with other professional entertainers that may be playing the instrument they play or sing. And then I work with many trying to improve their professional skills, hoping that those lessons may be something that will help them should they decide to become professional entertainers at some point in the future in their progression as a musician or a singer.
That's incredible. How are you kind of vetting? I'm sure you're getting a lot of kids reaching out and saying, hey, we want to have this scholarship. We want to be a part of this program. What are you looking for? What are some of the requirements that they're bringing into you so that you can help them expand?
Well, obviously, initially, skills on whichever instrument or vocally that they're pursuing. We want to see that there's actually some intense effort on their part that they want to do this. They want to be a performer. Then beyond that, it's the school aspects. We want to see that they've been academically committed, that they've had some positive momentum. They've participated in their local communities by volunteering in other organizations and showing that they care about the people around them. And then we have a solid group of a mixture of teachers as well as community members that review anyone that applies for the scholarship. And once they sort of go through their vetting, then we let them know that we've chosen them to be a scholar for a future scholarship, or we're giving them the current scholarship if they're going off to college. And that process goes through our Share America Foundation, which is a 501c3, and folks can support that if they'd like. They can go to shareamericafoundation.org and learn more about it. There's lots of gifts that they can find there if they just want to donate and get something. Here, some of our young people are in some of those projects. One of the most interesting ones is this project right here, Amy. We did this in 2019. It's called Americana Youth of Southern Appalachia. And we had over 30 young people participate in this project.
Wow.
It went number one on the global Americana charts in 1 month from being debuted. And then every young person who had a cut on this project wound up with a chart song. So
that is just fantastic. What an incredible, tangible thing for them to see how this works. And you invested in their lives, and then they got that kind of an outcome and something that they have forever to share. And what a powerful memory that you have to share, to see all your years of work and to be giving back that way. I bet the reward is just that you can't put words to it.
Well, it continues to. I see each and every day of every year. It's watching some of these young people that I've been working with for 5, 6 years, some longer, and seeing them reach the point where they're spreading their own wings. They're getting those gigs, and they're going out and they're playing shows, opening for other country acts, opening or simply playing their own gigs in a particular venue. That's very gratifying to see that they've reached that point and they're continuing to grow. And I was blessed. We just celebrated our 77th anniversary of the Hollywood Hillbilly Jamboree, which is a show that was
Wow.
started in 1945. I'm privileged to be the purveyor of that show and have been since the early 1990s, taking over from Doc Rambling Tommy Scott. You might notice this red hat over my shoulder here. That's Doc Scott's hat that he used to wear on the show, on the real old time medicine show that he carried. And part of that was the Hollywood Hillbilly Jamboree. Originally started in 1890 with his show, but this aspect of it he started in 1945. And but many of the young people in our Share America Foundation that we've mentored recently, they performed on our 77th anniversary show, playing as musicians and of course feature entertainers. And it was a wonderful experience having all of them that I've seen expand, just grow both within and with their talents as they've come along in elementary.
It's an expansion of your talent. Your talent has now been mentored and passed on to others, that you're seeing them expand and you're seeing them grow in their talent and reaching people and sharing music. And it's like your fingerprints are all over the place. And it's just so wonderful because we're supposed to share our talents that way. We're supposed to pass this on. We're supposed to reach back and help others coming up. And I love the fact that you aren't just sitting there in your house saying, yeah, look at all the things I used to do, or look what I still do now. And I'm not reachable. You are reachable and you're reaching out. And I just think that is just so powerful. And I encourage all of our viewers and listeners here to definitely reach out to this foundation and donate and support and find out ways you can help, because I see firsthand how you really are touching lives. And it's just incredible.
Well, thank you, Amy. It's just like I mentioned Bill Monroe. Of course, Bill Monroe brought our young group to Grand Ole Opry, but in addition to that, he took me under his wing as a fiddle player and literally spent hours with me teaching me to play various tunes on the fiddle. And this is a gentleman who started the genre of bluegrass music, who was a Grand Ole Opry star and is considered one of our greatest American musicians. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Bluegrass Country, Songwriters Hall of Fame. I was blessed to also get to tour with him as part of his Bluegrass Boys. Jim and Jesse and the Virginia Boys of the Grand Ole Opry did similarly to me and brought me up in the industry of country music and opened the horizons for me. That's what I hope to do for some of these young people. And, whether it's taking them to get to appear on WSM around the Grand Ole Opry or getting to get in a concert with John Snyder or whomever, it's always a blessing to see them blossom.
That's incredible. Now, in your spare time as well, besides your full acting career and your full music career that is just so rich and all of your giving back, you've also put pen to paper and done some really great writing and written some books. Let's talk about your books for a moment.
Certainly. I've got a couple of different projects that I've done. One of my favorite, and I'm going to set this fiddle down here a second so I can pick it up. One of my favorites of the project is the Encouragers book series. And that, in a way, reflects some of the things we've been talking about. Within the Encouragers book series, I highlight the great people who invested in me. I saw their encouragement in my life. I'm sharing the story of that encouragement. There were so many of them that I wound up writing 3 volumes of the book.
Wow.
And here's the 3rd volume here. And with each book, there's hundreds of photos from my career. I have recipes of the various entertainers that are featured. And you'll find anybody in these books that impacted me. It could be Roy Rogers, the great singing cowboy. It could be Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian.
Yes.
Anybody from Sonny Schroyer, from the Dukes of Hazzard, to Ken Curtis, as I mentioned, just dozens of great actors, entertainers, and everyday folks who made a difference in my life. And these books highlight that. The reason I wrote it, though, was not only to put down in history what I saw these people doing in their lives quietly. They weren't all just broadcasting. They were a part of what I did. I wanted people to know what they did for me, but at the same time, I want them to look at this and see their lives as a possibility to be an encourager for somebody else.
Yes.
Because everyone, every single day has the opportunity. God sends someone into their lives to be an encouragement to. You may not recognize it immediately, but they're there. And each time you pass that opportunity up, the world's a little bit less because of it, because we have so much that we can share with others. It's up to us to make the effort to share it.
What was it like for you to put those together? I would imagine there had to have been a few moments where you were maybe getting the tissue and had to put the pen down. I mean, because here you were so intimately involved with so many of these key people that played such an important role in your life. But as you're saying, important roles in many lives. How was it for you to put this together?
You hit the nail right on the head, Amy. It was, in many respects, it was very melancholy because, unfortunately, a lot of the people that I wrote about are no longer with us. And but that was another reason that I felt compelled to write the story, because some are lesser known than others. Some are, everyone knows. You know, there's mentions of my friend Dolly Parton in here. There's mentions, of course, of Carol O'Connor. There's Bill Monroe, the Jim and Jesse's, and Roy Acuffs, and so many others that people know their names, but there are others who are lesser known. And I wanted to make sure that that career or that moment in time was recorded somewhere in history for someone to see and maybe draw a nugget of whether it was a feeling of just, isn't that amazing what they did with their lives, or possibly it's just that inspiration that if they did this, I can do it too.
That's awesome. Where can we find those books? Where can our viewers and our listeners get a hold of those?
Easiest place is randalfranks.com/store. You can go there. If you order there, you can say, I want this autographed to me, and I'll sign it for you and send it right out. Of course, you can also visit the Amazon.com and get them on the Randal Franks page at Amazon.com, but order them from me. I'd rather autograph it for you.
I would like that as well. I will be placing my order immediately. I know that you haven't slowed down and nothing is stopping your continual movement forward. You have some upcoming projects. Any kind of teasers you can give us right now besides the incredible Civil War film that you're putting together? Anything else upcoming or that you want us to know?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of things. I want to mention my latest gospel project. It's gospel and comedy. It's called Keep 'Em Smiling. Folks can also get this at randalfranks.com/store. This has a lot of the material that I do when I'm traveling and performing on gospel concerts or in the churches. This particular project has a lot of funny stories on it. Now, I didn't come off very funny today, but you would be amazed at some of the funny things I could say if you really want to find out. A few years ago, I was included in a project called in fact, it's right here, Country Music Humorist and Comedians by Lowell Jones, who's one of our greatest Appalachian historians. And I was pretty gratified to be able to be included in that collection along with Jerry Clower and Minnie Pearl and Jeff Foxworthy and so many others that, I tell jokes and share those on my stories. And I've learned from some of the greatest comedians of Appalachia. You can catch our project with Alan Autry, who's our co-star from In the Heat of the Night, Bubba. You can see that on our website. There's so many different things coming up. I guess my greatest hope is that folks, as we make it available, will find our project, The American's Creed, which is a short film that I'm both directing and starring in. And like I mentioned, that'll begin in the film festival circuit over the next few months. And then it'll be made available on the web for folks to find, along with a documentary highlighting the folks on it, as well as the reasoning behind doing the project. Because I was very blessed to concentrate on an important part of American history in this film and share the story of one of the people who back in my family tree was made a big difference in our history.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And that is a must watch. I have to tell our viewers and listeners here, I did get a small sneak peek, and I have to tell you, you do not want to miss this and have your Kleenex handy. You're really going to feel some emotion and you're going to feel connected to this history as Randal has such a great way of doing. I have to tell you, Randal, this has to be my number one favorite interview of all time. First of all, as a fellow country artist and growing up on country music with the last name Scruggs, that shows itself for me. But as an interviewer, as a colleague, as a friend here, this has just been very memorable for me. And I'm so thankful that you gave me the honor of being with me today and sharing your story. And I really encourage everyone, go to the site, go to the store, get these books, share them. If you know someone that would love them, buy a couple copies, he'll autograph them. And it's worth having this and getting to hear from a legend like yourself. And I know you probably don't want to hear that all the time, but truly, you really are a legend. The stories that you have, the history, the contribution you've made to the music world and to the acting world has just been first class. And it's an honor to know you. And now the difference you're making in the lives of our young adults is just fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, it's been my privilege, Amy. Before we go, do you want me to fiddle?
I was just going to say, would you please play for us? That's what we've been waiting for.
I make no promises. If you like good fiddle playing, this may not be the time to listen. So I'm going to do a fiddle tune for you. This is one that I used to do for Bill Monroe. He loved to dance on the shows, and this is one he always asked me to play when he wanted to do some dancing. So,
Getting an exclusive.
yeah.
Wow, that was a treat. Oh my gosh, you all got it here on Amy Scruggs in the Spotlight with the one and only Randal Franks. You are truly a one of a kind and a gem to us all. Thank you so much, Randal.
Thank you, Amy. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for listening to In the Spotlight podcast. For more information, you can go to amyscruggsmedia.com and make sure and follow on social media at Amy Scruggs Media.